because I think we've got a pretty amazing panel here and representatives from ecosystems. Sebastian from Polygon actually has two hats on today. It's all about identity, but also ecosystems. Sebastian, you've been leading Polygon ID and are also quite embedded, obviously, in the Polygon ecosystem. With Martin, co-founder of Gnosis, who has been doing Gnosis Pay, among several other things that we'll hopefully discuss. And with Anthony from Aleph Zero, very privacy focused, and also with a new product that goes into the payment realm, which is why we're here to talk about. I'm Julian. I'm the co-founder of idOS, an identity storage layer that enables compliant cross-chain identity sharing, basically. Cool. So, how shall we start? This is about ecosystems and how ecosystems have developed in the past. And I want to start by a hypothesis, and I would like you to comment on that, if this is something that you're seeing or if there's a bit more nuance to it. And if we've been looking at ecosystems, we saw them compete against or wanting to be the fastest, right, in the beginning. We've seen that there's the interoperability play. So who's the fastest, who's the most connected one? And I want to know from you guys, what's the next kind of realm that we're getting into? Is it who has the most users? Is it who has the most liquidity? Will be interesting to know. Martin, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing, well, many chains, and and I think currently we are in a situation where it's still a mix out of somewhat separate ecosystems where kind of every chain has their own, let's say DeFi liquidity has their own kind of identity solution. But of course, already there are still kind of many parts that can be shared across ecosystems that can be reused. Still, I would say on the interoperability layer, we are still quite far away from being kind of being one system. So the pain to have some kind of some assets or some your identity on one chain and then using it on another chain is still quite significant. Just one challenge to mention here. I think it's a super important step to currently transition from EOAs, kind of key-based wallets, to smart contract accounts. That brings a lot of advantages in terms of usability, kind of gas abstraction, ability to recover, start with a kind of seedless onboarding, and then kind of start with a temporary key, and then replace that. So that's all great, but it brings a big challenge. You have now your smart contract, which is now your identity, which is even harder to use than on other chains, because that address you don't have on another chain, and you can't very easily reuse on another chain. And so even simple things like that we are currently mainly using a single address that does not contain something like a chain ID is already a problem, because you're saying send money to this address, but it's not clear on what chain. So I would say we're still, unfortunately, in a stage where interoperability between ecosystems is not as good as it needs to be.
Hi. Yes, so 100% agree. And to go back to the original question, maybe what's the most important thing? I would say that's still the users, obviously, because users bring liquidity, users bring expectations also that we have to later meet, and the more users we have, the more feedback we're getting on how to improve the product, and you can of course also expand that to the entire space. And onboarding, we also see onboarding as the biggest challenge for, and I'm not talking only from the Aleph Zero perspective, but just generally from the industry perspective, because even this example of centralized versus decentralized finance, and we talk about, say, newcomers to Web3 space, where we're generally saying that DeFi is better, it's safer, it's non-custodial, but then we don't give them the tools to that can compete with the comfort of a centralized exchange, essentially. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And users are ready to pay for comfort, which is seen in the latest Uniswap move with the front-end percentage fee. MetaMask has been doing that for a while with a slightly higher fee, of course, as well. So yeah, I would say the moment we improve comfort without sacrificing too much on the security front is where we're gonna at least get closer to solving the onboarding challenge.
Let's just use this one, well, on the safe side. Sebastian, we are both in the identity space. As an industry, we've been talking about identity for the last 8 years or so, and that we need decentralized identity as well. Yet, I would say that we're definitely not there yet, right? There's still some echo.
Maybe we just need to speak loud.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So sorry for this, we're working on a fix.
Okay, all
Try
good.
to speak louder.
Does that work as well?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're definitely not there yet when it comes to decentralized identity. Not in terms of like people working on it, not in terms of like projects, but actual operational implementation. And I would love to hear your thoughts on why you think this is, like, what's the missing piece so that these guys say, amazing, let's have everything, supported by an identity layer.
I really miss the microphone, but I'll do my best. Well, first, I'd like to say that we are actually using decentralized identities. Blockchain. Do I there?
Hello?
Okay.
So we are users of decentralized identifiers already, right? Everybody has a wallet, right? And that's something that you have created yourself without central authority. You use that to authenticate yourself to a lot of the apps, right? So you have the identifier. That's step number one. So what does it take for a decentralized identity system? Well, we are halfway there. The second part of the identity model is the part where you share attributes about yourself. Now you have an identifier, which is not interoperable, right? It's for one chain only, but you need to share attributes. The challenge we have, I think, to go to that second step where applications start asking for attributes of this decentralized identity is, I think we're trying to solve questions that nobody's we answer questions nobody's asking yet. So if you think about credentials, right? There are the masked credentials, the things that are hard facts about yourself, like you're human, you are not civil, you have basic KYC, all these hard credentials that will be required at some point in time. And then you have the nice to have attributes about yourself, who you are, whether you like, etc., etc. And the thing is, applications have not been forced yet to ask for the hard facts, right? Until they do need to ask for these things. We have answers for questions that are not there. So users are not going to be collecting credentials that they cannot use anyway, right? So if I had to summarize the reason why in the last 8 years it didn't happen, I would say first user experience, because there's a lot to improve. I think we need to reach a point where it's like signing with Google with a Google, right? When it looks like that, then it may work.
The second is lack of economic incentives and sustainable infrastructure for identity. All of us that are in this world are doing things for free, right? And monetization always comes like an afterthought, right? And then we create all these wonderful products but never really capitalize them. We disappear, and then the next guy comes with the next founding round, and they comes with new ideas, new standards, and everything starts again, right? So you need to build it with sustainability in mind, right? And the last thing is, as you say, I think, is interoperability. Nobody wants to worry about where they are operating or working, right? They just want to use it, right? And we need to learn from the people that are doing this well, like Google, right? You don't think if this is going to work in one country or another website or another website, it just works everywhere, right? So that needs to be invisible for the user as well.
We are here to talk a bit more on the money legal side of identity. So I guess KYC is definitely a buzzword here. And I know that both of you are working on financial applications, modules that work on the ecosystem, but might also work on other ecosystems. Martin, you guys announced early this year Gnosis Pay. Can you lead us through, like, from a chain perspective, what was missing to bring something that actually touches people's everyday lives and touches the financial world on chain?
Yeah, for sure. So it's quite a long list. So maybe quick recap what Gnosis Pay is. It's a way to have a safe, previously not so safe, but now safe that well, obviously is fully in your custody. So your wallet and works with every wallet can control that safe, and you hold stablecoins in it. And there's particularly for Europe, there's a very nice stablecoin called EUR that is considered e-money, and you can directly out of your wallet also interact with the banking system, so you can directly trigger a SEPA transfer directly from your wallet. Anyhow, so that you can do, but Gnosis Pay specifically also wants an integration into, well, there's still to this point widest payment network, which is Visa and MasterCard. So yeah, you will be able to have a Visa card, and well, when you tap it, basically that will trigger an on-chain transaction and kind of fees. So if you pay 20 euros, just exactly 20 euros in stablecoins will be deducted. So we are really getting close to a point where we are creating kind of neobank experience, but self-custodial. So for that all to come into existence, at least 12 projects or kind of 12 things needed to come together. So kind of we have Safe, kind of the account abstraction solution. We have things like Gelato, a relay solution. Then of course we need we work with we need KYC solution, Fractal. We need KYT, so know your transaction, or good kind of some compliance solution to kind of basically say those funds come from a from a source that's allowed, or kind of that's not at least on some involved in things that that can't be except for payments. Then we are using a layer 2 on top of Gnosis chain, because we need kind of the guaranteed to have very fast and cheap execution, and actually using Polygon's DK EVM here. Well, then we need the liquidity, of course. So we need liquidity on chain, so that we use Curve and Balancer to have sufficient liquidity for this EUR-E token, because of course dominant stablecoins are of course the dollar-based ones, USDC, USDT, DAI, and so on. So we need great liquidity between those. Then I've certainly forgotten like 3 or 4 other things, but all those things need to come together to enable such a solution.
And this is just one debit card, right?
Yeah.
And if we're looking at the bank stack, you have like probably 50 different things that still need to be there. Like, well, there's a bank account with Monerium, I guess, but deposit, lending, borrowing, payment, and actually on the payment side, you guys just announced something called Commons, and I found that quite interesting. We had quite some discussions, and I know that Martin, you also do feel passionate about what Anthony is trying to solve, which is a privacy layer for transactions, which to just have a bit more of a buzzword here, build a compliant Tornado Cash equivalent. And how in the world do you do that without going to jail?
I mean, okay, so announcing is a big word. We published a white paper that is 75 pages long. The R&D team spent over a year working on this. We have several components built out already. The first actual product is going to debut fairly soon, but the way we're approaching privacy is through, say, a combination of zero-knowledge proofs and secure multi-party computation. So there are no trusted execution environments, there's no hardware, there is no dependence on a, say, large chipset manufacturer and whether they maintain something or not, which matters from both the decentralization standpoint really, as well as the cost standpoint in case, for instance, the chipsets would need to be exchanged in validator nodes. And then what we want to do is combine two things, which is speed and privacy, which when it comes to on-chain stuff are mutually exclusive, basically. But what we did like first is we built a fast L1, which is Aleph 0, and now we're working on this privacy stack. Then in the meantime, Tornado Cash happened essentially, right? So what the way we interpret what happened there was that essentially somebody published the code, people started using the code, and maybe I won't get into the philosophical debate on what's right and what's wrong, but the way we think the sort of combination of on-chain privacy is going to go is we'll need to introduce KYC and KYB for everyone using privacy. So now the question is, how do you make it bearable for the users? How do you make it so that the UX is solid before even you enter the ecosystem? Because overall, most people in this space do need to have their identities verified at some point, whether it's for centralized exchanges, whether it's for on-ramps, doesn't really matter. So we're all doing it, and now the question is, how do you make it better? And this is to an extent where idOS comes in. For instance, what we identified as a major issue when it comes to on-chain privacy also is UX. So for instance, if you use a mixer, the funds quite often get just flagged. You cannot really prove the provenance, you cannot prove that they come from what's called a legitimate source. And also, yes, there are KYT, there's chainalysis, there's coinfirm and so on and so forth, but identity combined with tools that do on-chain AML solves it. At least that's what we hope for. And effectively, then you don't have the challenges related to the UX whenever you want to exit this privacy system. So that's pretty much the ballpark. Essentially, at the moment, we're working on finalizing something called the Shielder, which has been a concept that's been in the industry for a while, but we don't think anyone really deployed a solution that actually works. If you try and go and use different sort of products that shield transactions, it's too slow, it crashes very often also. And we just want to start with that, and then introduce basically a private order book, decentralized environment that has a chance of becoming as convenient as their centralized counterparts.
Again, I find this, and of course I've heard about it before, but to the depth that you guys needed to go just to have like one module ready is quite astonishing. If I take a look at you guys as an ecosystem and the resources that you can deploy to solve that, sounds like a major effort. Something that I picked up on, that's at least my hunch, is that there is a lot more ecosystem collaboration these days. Like there's Polygon, powering the Gnosis layer 2. Neon just announced that they want to help scale Ethereum as well. And I was wondering, like, if I'm looking at those different solutions, right, wouldn't it make more sense to have like a composable layer that is even cross-chain, like a Polygon ID solution that helps with identity across chains, even if it's not an EVM compatible system, but making it fit as a module into with Gnosis Pay to enable private transactions. Would that be something that would be interesting? Do you see this actually coming up, or what keeps us from collaborating?
Yeah, I would say it's absolutely interesting and, well, even necessary, but it's unfortunately also still challenging because, yeah, unfortunately, I think we have solved the scalability problem in the sense that there are, well, plenty of chains and plenty of also kind of now layer 2s, but they are unfortunately in no way standardized. So kind of there is hardly a way to have kind of one standard interface to interact with those other chains, and that makes it currently quite hard to develop something that works on. I mean, there's even of course a space beyond there's big space other than the EVM world, but even within the EVM world, it's not so easy to kind of just, well, let's say, read the state from a random other chain. So I think on that front, there's still, unfortunately, quite a lot of work to do.
Yeah, like we of course want to make the privacy layer modular, but then again, that's the main challenge, which is essentially not as simple as just saying that it's modular and you can integrate it. There's a lot of hardcore technical work required for every one of those integrations. And like if we talk about potentially becoming sort of like a privacy black box modular middleware, let's call it, it's essentially a separate project, which we also have on the roadmap, but like now we just want to put out a showcase and kind of show that, hey, this just works. And then we move on to designing sort of the lacking bits and pieces that we have that will allow us to make this much more interchain, let's call it. But yeah, all of those, I'm sure with Gnosis Pay, all of those 12 things that needed to happen, it's 12 separate, massive projects where everything can go wrong, and the cost is just huge, also.
And privacy is that? Sorry, yeah, privacy. So privacy is certainly a thing we have. We need, and we have not solved yet. So kind of right now, on Gnosis Pay, privacy is still a kind of somewhat unsolved problem. So now your credit card transaction will actually leave an on-chain trace that's not too hard to then connect to your wallet, and that's certainly not a long-term solution, for sure.
So also on the identity side, I mean, we sure have some problems to solve. Maybe we start with the rather simple terms to kind of discover how we can help these guys actually get there. Seems like we have another panelist. So there are all those concepts out there, vastly different, like Solar tokens. Vitalik yet published another article about identity and how it's needed and what we can do in terms of like civil resistance. We have identity wallets, we have decentralized storage. What should ecosystems do? Like, what's the way forward? What will actually get us adoption? What do you think is the system that people should look to if they want to solve identity, like the identity layer?
It's a big question. So I guess a real use case and technology that doesn't suck. Real use case could be the civil resistance use case. which I think is a very bad way of selling it. Civil resistance is just one of the consequences of not having digital identity accountability, right? So, yeah, but there are other things that you can do when you don't have accountability on your identity, but you can just renew your identity every morning, right? Imagine every morning you change your face, everything you did in the past doesn't count, you go again, right? So there is a number of use cases for that. Civil resistance is one. What we need is to have a permanent, immutable identity that travels with us in the same way our real identity does. It can be scary at times as well, but I think that's a use case that that could drive adoption. Given that we have all the economic things, the technology is okay, the user experience is okay, I think giving people one single identity that will be a clone, a mirror of their real identity, and will accumulate reputation across all their life, right? And that is what we usually talk about, proof of uniqueness, right? You prove of uniqueness, what WorldCoin is doing with your eyes, right? It can be also be done with KYCs, can also be done with a number of things, right? But the challenge is, it doesn't matter if it's WorldCoin or if it's Polygon or if it's idOS. The challenge is when one single company has all these records, right? So I think the challenge to solve is how we make this an open ecosystem when you can get your proof of uniqueness from multiple providers, but then they somehow trust each other to have this global view, and then your uniqueness stands globally across all chains, etc., etc. Right? That will unlock a lot of things. People always talk about non-collateralized lending, but it's everything that in the real world depends on your reputation, right? So you don't go to a gym and you make a mess because it's your reputation. You don't misbehave because it's your reputation, right? People care about, it's another asset, right? It's digitalizing another asset. In the same way NFTs created scarcity, this could create a new economical construct, which is identity accountability.
Maybe a follow-up question, just to make it very specific. How are you guys planning on tackling that? Is it like Polygon ZK, which is going to be scaled across the ecosystems? Is it kind of like an extra identity layer that you want to provide? Is it a protocol? Is it an initiative where you want to bring together people that actually finally solve it in a way? How do you guys see Polygon ID?
Sorry, we have always been very clear about what is our monetization model. It's based primarily on infrastructure. Secondarily is fees on paid credentials, right? But our approach is to, let's say, long term, we want to be an infrastructure provider. So a layer that others can build on top, right? We don't want to own the full stack of identity. So there is wallets, there is issuers, there is verifiers, there is all kinds of things. We don't want to do all, right? We want to be the underlying infrastructure. That said, we may have to build the full stack just to bring the adoption. Because if you try to put all these parts together in common, right? And also at the same time bring millions of users, it's just too complex. So that you need to build the full stack, drive the adoption, and once you have millions of users in it, then you can open that ecosystem. And our mission is to have an open ecosystem. We don't want to control the full stack.
Maybe to ask you guys, if you have a wish list and have us sitting here, well, I have an ecosystem, identity doesn't work there really well right now, but your solutions don't work either. Don't sugarcoat it. What would you need for really driving mainstream adoption in terms of decentralized identity being used on that chain?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of many things. So yeah, so first, technically it has to work and be on a similar level, simple as login with Google, let's say, and I think we are getting closer to that. I think this recent development that passkeys are kind of broader supported by, well, Apple, Google, Microsoft. that's a good thing, because ultimately users, or ultimately, if you want to do anything with decentralized identity or wallets, I mean, somehow, somewhere, users need to hold keys. And of course, it's extremely helpful if, well, still large ecosystems like the Apples and the Googles of this world make it easier for users to hold keys, and that's kind of what passkeys are. So I would certainly say it should leverage that. So simplicity is, of course, number one. Yeah, I mentioned the interoperability a few times. So I think that's simply something that has to happen, that we, again, are able to have a more complex, address format, or kind of a way to name not only an address, but in combination with a chain, which then, in my view, is your identity. To your point, you mentioned at the very beginning that we already have that, but I think it needs to kind of evolve beyond the hex addresses we know. And then, of course, we need use cases, or we need applications that make use of it. Yeah.
Well, starting maybe from the user standpoint, first, a process that doesn't make you, furious, I guess. Because oftentimes, if you just go through a standard KYC process, it crashes, doesn't recognize your face, even though it's well lit and you're looking at the camera. These are probably, on the back end, these are probably not that easy things to solve, but still, it's a problem. Second is the interoperability of credentials, at least within an ecosystem. Ideally, beyond the ecosystem, but this would require a massive incentive alignment across all of the major, ecosystems, essentially. And I think these two really are key to kind of solve this on the user level, like what would users want, end users, essentially. So yeah, just better UX, that's the first thing. And then the second is not revealing your entire identity unless you absolutely need to, right? So this is where the ZK tag kicks in, which is you can just, for instance, prove that you're not on sanctions lists, and that gets you access to, say, a private trading environment, where you also don't put others at risk of mixing their funds with your funds that are coming from a bridge hack, for instance. So this is what we're hoping to see. This is what we're hoping to also build with you guys, and that's pretty much it.
Thanks. I do want to open up the round for questions. So I still have plenty, but if you want to think about that, we'll open it up real soon. So just looking at it from an adoption space, I mean, we've been recently crunching the numbers again. We probably have 5 to 8 million active users on chain. We have in exchanges and centralized services probably like 300 million, probably even a bit more, I would say. What are we doing wrong? Like, what do we need to change to actually get people on chain? Do we need another FTX so that people really understand that their funds are not safe if you give it to a centralized service?
I don't think we need another FTX, because if people in general would respond better to fear than incentives, then the world would be a different place probably. Honestly, I just think it comes down to just one thing, which is UX, and then educating people about continuous, like we've been doing really, but just not on a mass scale probably, continuous education about DeFi versus CeFi. But also expecting people to just store their seed phrases on pieces of paper forever, and to expect that 3 billion people are going to do that is just insane. So we need some form of custody, obviously, And whenever, for instance, Ledger introduced this recover function, and there was a huge outcry. It wasn't just about the recovery function; it was also about the fact that people discovered that there's access to the devices and so on and so forth. But it's one way of solving this, just distributing sort of the key between a number of, let's call it, trusted actors. But this is just as much a technological debate as it is philosophical, I would say. And I don't think we have a proper answer for this. I'm not sure if you guys would agree.
Yeah, I would say, and that has been my thesis for a long time. The UX just has to be better than kind of the alternative. So it just has to be. I don't think we get to 300 million users or something like that because of some ideological reasons to say it's better to have decentralized systems and so on. They just have to be better, and the way they can or will become better is that in open systems you can have permissionless innovation, and hopefully permissionless innovation will lead to experiences that kind of just develop faster, just are more innovative, and therefore are then also ultimately better and nicer. So I think there has been a period where you already saw that on Ethereum, where once you were in the system, once you had a wallet, to me it's kind of so much nicer to go to a new dApp and just connect my wallet and not be required to type in my email, create a new account, type in a password, and so on, and it just works. Of course, that was only a short period, because then gas prices became insane on Ethereum, and kind of for that reason it became not really usable. And then now we see this, we saw this explosion of other chains, and again that brought a bunch of challenges. So unfortunately, in a way, we are in some way worse off than we were, like, let's say, in the 2019 area or something like that in some aspects. But yeah, those things are finally getting solved, and then we will hopefully see the benefits of open ecosystems that can develop at faster pace. So concrete, bring back this example of Gnosis. So we do believe that out of the 8-9 elements we used, luckily we hadn't built those 8-9 elements. We just kind of were using them. So in a way, we are getting to a point where it is possible to create something like a neobank, Revolut in 26 at a fraction of the cost. So something that would previously cost 100 million to create such an experience, as you know that from those neobanks, that suddenly a 5-people developer team with maybe a budget of $500,000 can do. And I absolutely think that will lead to better experiences that will then lead to users.
That's an interesting point. So maybe it's not just the self-custodial thing as a feature, but mostly blockchains still being a backend technology that just makes things open and really cheap. Cool. I want to give the opportunity to you guys to ask a question. We have one.
Thank you for the great panel. A quick question. Don't you think the space of identity has more to do with political advancement in comparison to technical advancement? So if you think about it, like from interoperability, there is a lot of like credentials or identity credentials like run by the government or managed or issued by the government. Wouldn't it be as a sort of like need to build also interoperability with governments to bridge those identities into Web3? It's like credential envelopes or something like that, because ultimately this is the most sensitive space in the Web3 when talking about identities, which is currently on the traditional world managed by government. How practical, how viable? like the advancement of this space moving forward?
My comment would be, I absolutely see that point, but I also see kind of a big part of identity that's not necessarily kind of related to any government requirements. So, like, if I browse the web kind of outside of our nice Web3 space, then still kind of my main identity in a way is my Google account. So I use login with Google quite often, and maybe a few, Twitter and GitHub, and maybe there, but there are 3-4 kind of in a way identity providers, and that's still a huge space that is fairly unconstrained from any government requirements and regulation. Of course, then you have on the other side, still quite a number of applications, financial applications, where you have very specific requirements, and yes, of course, it would be wonderful if the requirements would be not in 180 jurisdictions different, and you would need to find solutions for many jurisdictions. I am maybe not too optimistic that this will change, but of course, even there, we see at least some attempts.
I would say personally I'm looking forward for that. I'm looking forward for governments to issue digital identities to everyone in the world. I think that's their job, and I personally, maybe I'm a bit controversial here, but I wouldn't trust any company to do that, or any even decentralized body to do that. Right? So that's their job, that's what they have to do. Now, what do we do with these credentials? That's a different story, right? We have a Polygon ID is based on a protocol called ID3. ID3 is all about how you share and communicate these credentials, right? How you use zero knowledge, how you keep private even the identifier that you use to present the credential, right? So there is a number of, privacy is a very complex topic, right? You only need to miss one aspect to compromise the entire thing, right? So we've been spending years in the protocol to make sure that nothing leaks if you don't want to leak it, right? So two examples, right? You have Aadhaar in India, everybody has a PDF, right? So imagine that you will have the same. That thing contains even your biometrics, right? On the other side, you have the same governments like UK or France now saying that you will have to prove that you're over 18 to access porn, right? Okay, do you want to present your full DNA with the biometrics to every porn site to prove that you can watch the video? Probably not, right? So I think there is a lot of space for products working on this communication and hiding and keeping private the credentials that you have achieved.
Hi, those are great answers. I would just like to build on this. Maybe instead of asking how much do you think about the Roman Empire, how much do you think about interoperability? And when governments are going to build their own products, identities, etc., is this like a zero-sum game? So like if they build something, does this mean that whatever identity systems we build, we're not going to be able to use them for those use cases? Or can we just bridge somehow whatever they build with our ecosystems community, how compatible this is, and maybe also globally, like maybe some jurisdictions they're a little bit, I would say, following the rule of law versus the others that are in a different situation.
So, I guess you're talking about idOS, FC, and all this. So in the self-sovereign identity world, there are two fronts, right? So on one side, and this is where we are, the ones we think we need to find use cases and real applications, and that is the way with adoption. And there is another set of companies that are basically building relationships super long-term with the European Union, with the governments, because they are waiting for that big moment, right? The thing is, it's moving so slow that it's not sustainable for any company just to wait to see how these standards unfold, right? They have also actually made 2 or 3 critical changes, breaking changes backward that would completely cancel anything that you would have built on top of the initial specs, right? So I would say whenever it happens, we will be on top of it. In the same way, you can see now taking Aleph is the most successful case of national identity. Like 1 billion people, a lot of penetration, right? And now you see a lot of companies that are building on top of these credentials because the mission of the government is very atomic, right? They need just to certify who you are. That's it, right? They will not handle your digital identity. They have nothing to do with auto identifiers. They don't have nothing to do with reputation, right? So there is a lot of business opportunity that I think will arise from these initiatives, and we cannot wait for them to be developed. So we are not even trying to be compatible with them. Honestly, it's too painful. It's too slow.
We need to wrap it up, unfortunately. I want to ask you one last question, which is a simple one. We're definitely going to hold you accountable if it's not right. When do you think we will see decentralized identity being widely used? In which year?
According to Gartner, 2026. Probably I'm not smarter than that.
Yeah, I would actually refer to your previous answer and say we are in a way using it already since many years. So kind of every wallet is a digital identity, but yeah, they will become richer and richer over time.
I'm taking the politically correct route. I agree with both. Great answers.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.